Good afternoon. Today's agenda is going to be all about the MCAS. We're going to split up today into three parts. And because I couldn't be here, I thought I would do this screencast so that you'd have all the important information so that we can move forward with prepping our 10th graders for the MCAS. So for today, the first part is to review the updates and changes. We saw them in the fall, or some of them, and I want to make sure we're aware of all of them. The second part is to look at Test Nav 8 together, which is what you'll be sharing with your students, the first part of the lesson that you'll be given for your students so that they're aware of all the different functions and tools within the exam. The third part is for you to take the MCAS. There are 2 sessions that are computer-based testing. And then the fourth part, time permitting, is a new site where you can investigate some of your own questions and create your own, or use a bank of questions that are very similar to the MCAS, which is awesome. The last part of today will be working in your teacher teams, the 10th graders especially, to determine the following 3 pieces. When will you use Test Nav in class during your lesson in the next month and a half? When will you have time and give kids the time to do session 1 and session 2 in class so they can ask questions and navigate through through Desi's MCAS examples? And then this is down the road a little bit, but using questions from EdSite or actually Desmos and making sure kids are just more familiar with the online component. So the first part of today, again, is to look at the design, the test design, and some sampled items. I'll talk relatively quickly through this because we have seen some of these before in the fall. So remember, it's untimed, it's 2 sessions. There are various questions, the same things that are similar to what we used to have: multiple choice, short answer, and open constructed response. There's still a total of 60 points on this exam. Different now is it's computer-based. There are new standards, and I've shared you into that document. I gave you a paper on your desks one time in the last month or so, and I'll give you a link today as well for the standards that will be tested. There are some new question types, so we want to look at those specifically for us and our students. The calculator policy, the reference sheet, which everybody now has, but how to access that online, and then just an idea of the categories that are and percentages from each of our classes. So the score report, this is what it looks like. You can zoom in if you want to on this. The important part for us is how students are graded, not meeting expectations, partially meeting expectations, which is where we want people to be, or exceeding expectations, which is awesome. The new test is called the Next Generation Test, and the old test is called the Legacy Test. So we, this spring, will be taking the Next Generation Test, and you see there are a few extra and slightly different points in how things are spread out. The Legacy Test is actually being used still for students who need to retake. So if they fail the Next Generation Test in the spring, they will take the Legacy paper test, which is good because they can use our old reference sheet. There are some embedded matrix questions, so testing questions that are not going to count towards the student's scores. And so there will be a few of these, just as there normally are on SATs or ACTs, just to be aware of for students. The curriculum frameworks, which we haven't looked at in detail in a while, just so we have an idea. There's the conceptual category. It's coded that way, also called the model course, the cluster headings, the domain. We don't really need all of this information, but it's important to understand where that comes from as we look at this example. When we look at an example, this is a regular multiple choice example. On the right-hand side here, here's the coding. So if you want to open that blue book we have, we can look and see where it falls within all of the standards. So this is just a regular multiple choice exam question. The reporting categories and percentages are here. So we see number and quantity 15% with plus or minus 5%. Algebra and functions, geometry, stats and probability, which we talked about, and that's why we've altered our curriculum significantly to make sure that we have more of that happening in freshman and sophomore year. The types of questions. So multiple choice, multiple select we've talked about, where they choose more than one answer. Technology enhanced, so I want to make sure we know how to use those and solve those questions and then teach that to the kids, which I think is user friendly. We just want to make sure we give them access to that and ahead of time. Short answer, and then constructed response, where we're using calculators and explanations, and so there's just a little bit more going on there that we want to review. So multiple select questions, you literally select multiple answers. Technology enhanced questions. This is the hot spot. I think I remember we talked about this in the fall, where you click the actual answers versus clicking A, B, C, or D. So again, a version of multiple select. Match table grid, so you have to click different portions of the grid relative to what the question is. So I call this multiple select, but it's within a grid. Inline choice, so it's just a drop menu and they have to choose their answers that are in line with the question. And so they're not adding anything, it's just a choice. Graphing on the coordinate plane, and so students will have to be able to navigate and draw their graph there. Connecting one graph to another graph, so graphing functions where they're moving something around over here. And I'll show you how to do that. Some movement of the transformation, so a lot of graphing components where you're moving parts of the graph to get your answer. Likewise, on this bar graph, you're clicking portions of the bar graph to produce the graph you're looking for. On a number line, another type of graph, we just would have open, closed, arrows going either way, being able to have a segment versus array, and how to remove or change your answer. On the actual graph, if you have to draw an inequality or lines, we have the solid versus dotted line, where the shading region is. And so we'll practice this on the MCAS, but also on that site I told you about, EdSite. It's really easy to create these for our students, so we can do that as well. Fill in the blank answers, and what we want students to practice here is this would be good in Desmos or in EdSite or maybe some other online program or software that you've been using. Short answer, fill in the blank, again, being able and being familiar with the calculator component online and just the buttons that they have to use. The drag and drop is going on here, the multiple parts of a question. So this is a 2-point question, filling in the blank with just a number versus drag and drop. The short answer, fill in the blank. So we used to do it on paper, and now we literally plug it right in. Again, I think this is really user-friendly for kids, but something we should go over with them. Constructed response, so there's the open response here. We see symbols over here. We'll go through this in just a minute so that we have to see all the types of symbols kids could be using. And so what I want us to be doing today, and then when we're teaching the students or showing them, is just having them sort of navigate through all these drop-down menus. They may not be as familiar because they're not creating equations all the time or formulas like we are. Constructed response, paper versus online, excuse me. And so this is what we'll be doing. This is the old version of what we're looking at. And now we come to the calculator. So students all have their own calculator, but also there is a calculator embedded within the program, within the exam. But students should have their own graphing calculators and calculators that they've been using. We're almost done. The reference sheet here is the one that everybody's been given now. But if you notice on the right here, it says exhibits. And so that's similar to what it will look like on the MCAS. So you literally click this word and the reference sheet will be produced. I do believe students will be getting a hard copy of this as well, but this is online for them to see as well. And so the last thing here is a bunch of resources, and I'll share this out with you. I did already give you a copy of the standards here, but I can provide you with a second copy if you wish. Otherwise, you can click right in there. There's a lot of resources in here, but I think I want to navigate us to what I think is important for us to use, and you're welcome to go through this on your own time. But this piece right here for 9th and 10th grade teachers, along with us going through now in a few minutes, TestNav and the MCAS questions online. Okay, so at this time, why don't you take a 5-minute break and just talk amongst yourselves about what you've seen, any comments, maybe make a list of questions you might have for me right now if somebody could do that, and then email me that list of questions. That would be helpful so I could make sure I address them in our next meeting. Thank you.